Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Live One for One, where we have conversations that challenge us to live a life that will change a life. My name is John, and today I have an amazing opportunity to interview a wonderful friend of mine, Mr. Adam Johnson, who is the Regional Director of Middle Tennessee for Care Portal. Care Portal is a fantastic organization that bridges the gap for businesses and churches to vulnerable families. Please give it up and put your hands together for Mr. Adam Johnson. Everybody, welcome Mr. Adam Johnson, Regional Manager for Mid-State Tennessee Care Portal. Adam, what's up, buddy?
How's it going, John? So good to be on. I'm happy to be talking with you.
Yes, dude, you're a legend. Man, first off, just want to honor you for who you are, what you've done within the Mid-State area. It's so exciting when I sit with pastors, I sit with various different businesses or even DCS, and I hear the impact that you're having through Care Portal and really just trying to bring everybody together to meet needs, which is incredible. But, we have a lot of listeners from all over the place, some that are in Tennessee, some are outside of Tennessee, and I would love for you just to kind of share with them what Care Portal is for somebody that's never heard of Care Portal. And, even from the context of local businesses. Why does it matter for them? Why does it matter for the church? Why does it matter for our communities? Because you guys aren't specific to Tennessee. I mean, you're through our nation, which is super exciting. And I'm just hoping that this helps in some way encourage people. So I'd love to hear you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, first off, just thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about Care Portal and what we do. I'm super excited about that. For people who don't know what Care Portal is, what we say is Care Portal is a care sharing technology that drives action for local kids and families in crisis. So anyone who serves children can use Care Portal. And the way that we drive action is by just bringing awareness to churches, business leaders, and individuals in the community through an easy to use app or online platform where you can see needs in real time get posted by child serving professionals who are working with a child in your community. So these are, the families that we're seeing at the grocery store. These are the families that we're passing on the street. They're the kids that we're seeing playing out in their yards as we're driving through neighborhoods. So we're really calling people to just become aware, just to look at their neighbors and to see where there are opportunities for them to serve. And really the best thing about Care Portal is you don't have to go on and just fund everything. There's no expectation on people. We just want to raise awareness. And what we've seen is when people know that there are crises going on in their communities, when people know that there are people in need that are living next door to them or co-inhabiting the same spaces and communities, they want to help. They want to get involved. And so they're really taking the initiative. Our goal is always relationships. So we work through local Christian churches to have a delivery mechanism for any of these physical items that these children and families need so that these local churches can actually get trained. And it's been beautiful to see, churches who maybe have no idea what this vulnerable child space looks like, taking an initiative to learn how to be, friendly with that community and even with the foster and adoption community, how to be better prepared to receive those people as they're coming to their church or to go meet them where they're at and in their mess. So it's been really awesome to see it grow in Tennessee. And I started with Care Portal years ago just as a person at a church who said, yeah, I want to see those needs and I want to get involved. And then, God just opened a door for me to work for him. So I've been able to serve as regional manager for the last 3.5 years.
That's fantastic. Can you break it down a little bit, just for some audience as well too? Practically, what does that look like? Obviously our pastors they're very busy. People are knocking on their door regularly for help, whether it's a small church of, less than 100 people or a larger church of, 2,000-3,000 plus. There's a lot of needs there that they're trying to meet on their own. And, I get it. I wear that hat and, you understand it too, where, when you have another individual coming in and saying, hey, here's another program, here's another thing that you can do. It can be overwhelming. I don't think it's because they don't care. I think a lot of times it's because they are already caring so much for what they're trying to do. But maybe practically, what does that look like for a church, from the ground up? Just kind of simplify it out practically of what that looks like, or if there's a pastor listening, or even a leader in their business listening, because both can be involved what does that look like for them practically?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, a basic four-step process to every care portal request and everything that happens on the platform. It is a child serving professional, so these needs are vetted automatically. That's built into the technology. So that's one thing I like to point out to pastors is I know a lot of the time that they spend on benevolence requests or calls that are coming into the church, even about different programs or different initiatives. There's a level of vetting that the pastors and the ministry leaders feel responsible to do before they open it up to their congregation,
Yeah.
and that's smart and that's healthy. But with Care Portal, what I saw very early on, I'm the community outreach coordinator at our church, so
Okay.
I am bivocational, so I do that. And I was doing that for a while, and this technology really came along and helped me scale what we were already doing. It didn't change
Hmm.
anything really about the way that we do ministry. Care Portal's not a ministry; it's legitimately it's a technology platform that seeks to help scale ministries that already exist in communities. So,
Right.
so that in of itself made me more comfortable as a ministry leader to adopt the technology, to start using it, knowing that these needs that are coming in are vetted. They are from professionals, and the leadership of Care Portal does a vetting for the agencies that we partner with.
Hmm.
Um, Once that request goes in, it's no PII, so no personal identifying information is ever shared through the platform. So you won't get names, phone numbers, or addresses, anything like that for these families, up until the point that you raise your hand as a church. You click the Yes, I can help button, and then your church actually takes the lead on the request, and that's when you're committing to, hey, we'll be the delivery mechanism. We will actually be the hands and feet and go bring these items or
Yeah.
this funding or whatever that looks like. We'll bring that to the vulnerable family. And so another thing that I really loved about Care Portal when I was getting involved from a church perspective is I'm not reading these stories and then just shipping them things from Amazon.
Right.
I'm not reading these things and throwing funding in. And sometimes that's appropriate, and sometimes that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I really love to do is meet and engage with individuals in our community. And Care Portal gave me an opportunity to do that with people who aren't necessarily calling or beating down the door of the church. But
Right.
these families are hurting. They're being served by serving professionals, and I get to go and bring the items that they requested, and now I have their ear for a minute, and I get to talk to them and start to build relationship.
Yeah.
So that for me as a church leader or a business owner, even someone who's in that space serving vulnerable children, all the way around, it seems like, man, this is really solid. The way that it's built out is really solid, and what we're seeking to do is legitimately just help empower the church to be the church in their own communities.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if I'm hearing you right, when with Care Portal, so if I'm a pastor and I'm like, hey, I want to be involved in this space, basically, like what could happen is like you have DCS who or Protective Services, whoever wherever you
Hmm.
whatever you call it, wherever you're at. They are uploading various different needs that they have for kids that are in foster care or children or vulnerable families in your area, and then from there you're able to pull up Care Portal, you're able to see these requests come in as a church and or even as a business, if I'm is that correct as well too?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody can see requests on the
Yeah,
platform.
so even if you're a local business and you're saying my light just went off, and I had snapped my fingers. You know that clap on clap off back in the day.
Yeah.
Come on, light.
There you
But
go.
yeah, local businesses, churches can see these requests coming in if they're a user, and then from there, they can say, "Hey, man, we feel led to meet that need." They can
Hmm.
when they can meet that need, they can see the request, and then they can either provide monetary support where it's more transactional, or
Hmm.
the church could actually take it a step further. If they are a church and they're a faith-based organization, they can not only just meet the need monetarily, they can actually go and deliver whatever the need is as well too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a Christian Bible believing church is always at the point of care, is what we
Yeah.
call it. So anyone can see the request. It can be any business, any organization, any individual can actually open Care Portal right now. They can go to careportal.org, look at the map, click on requests, and interact accordingly with the request, giving funding or committing, like, hey, I have physical items that I can give. And
Yeah.
we call those people and those businesses, we call those champions on the platform.
Love that.
Great example is we have Ashley Furniture. So shout out to them. They actually gave over
Yeah.
200 beds to kids in
Come
Tennessee
on.
last year.
Come on, Ashley
So
Furniture.
They're amazing. They partnered with us on that level, but nobody from Ashley Furniture ever went and met face to face with a family in the name of Ashley Furniture. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So it's always when beds are committed or when something like that. So a very real example, a request goes in for a bed, anybody can meet that need, giving funding or physical items to meet that need. And
Mhm.
then one church will click the take the lead button on the request, and that Christian Bible believing church who has gone through the appropriate training with Care Portal, it looks like a lot of poverty sensitivity training and just a vetting process, making sure, hey, you guys are a Christian Bible believing church who is going to present the gospel in this way, and we're making sure that these families are safe, and that the people going into these environments understand what they could be walking into as far as what poverty looks like. And once they've gone through that training, they've become a connecting church. They've clicked that yes, I can help button, and then gone the step further, saying we want to take the lead and be the church that actually meets with this family. Then they're connected directly to the caseworker, and the caseworker or the child serving professional will
Mhm.
advise them like this is the best way to connect with this family. So it could
Mhm.
look like we're going to their house, or it could look like they're coming to the church and they're going to pick these items up from us, or it could look like a grocery request that goes in and you're meeting them at Kroger or Walmart and you're just shopping with the family
Yeah.
and using the resources that have been provided to pay for the groceries at the end of the Walmart or Kroger visit. And it gives you so many different avenues to serve, and there's so many different ways to get involved. There's even a button on the Care Portal request for every one of them. If you can't give monetarily or you can't give physically and you're thinking, man, this isn't for me, there's a prayer button. And
Mhm.
we've heard from caseworkers and from families that knowing someone is praying for me in my community, knowing that someone is taking time out of their day to lift me up to God, that means the world to them. So, there's all those avenues to get involved. And I really think the beauty of it is, as church leadership, a lot of times we don't have capacity to
Right.
drive these kinds of things or to always just
Yeah.
be on Care Portal watching for requests to come in.
Sure.
But if you open it up to your church, let people go through the training, and do your background checks and things like that, because they're going to be serving vulnerable kids. But once they've gone through those steps, now your entire church community. So if you have
Mhm.
a church of 500 people, all 500 people in your congregation can use Care Portal on one level or another. And they don't all
Mhm.
have to be people that connect face to face with the families, but they can all see the requests and chip in and give. People probably have garages full of furniture and things like
Right.
that a family would love
Yeah.
to inherit or to have from these local churches. So there's just so many ways to get involved, and not one person can do everything, but everybody can do something in this space.
Yeah, I love that. It really is a fantastic tool. We've been utilizing it through my nonprofit. I also, do wear that pastor hat as well too, and able to
Hmm.
facilitate through those requests as well. And I can say personally using it for our nonprofit on that side, and then also through the church hat is, man, it really is a an incredible platform for you to be able to be as engaged as your church has the capacity to be able to be engaged in. And so, I think a lot of times what happens in this space is, especially if you're looking at like more maybe smaller churches or rural churches or churches that don't have large staffs, or even a church that does have a large staff, it really provides the opportunity for everybody to be engaged in some capacity. And I think even for the businessman and businesswoman too, there's opportunities that they want to give back to, and a lot of times they just don't know what to do. They're like, man, I don't even know where to get started.
Yeah.
And so this really is a beautiful place, especially if you're a businessman or businesswoman who's saying, man, we really, our passion is to serve vulnerable children in some capacity.
Yeah.
What a great tool to say, hey, we're going to designate somebody on our team, and we're going to allocate maybe a few hours a week that they're able to get on Care Portal, and they're able to see what needs are there, and be able to say, hey, which ones do we want to respond to as an organization, and then celebrate that within your organization, so that
Yeah.
people on your team are saying like, man, this isn't just a workforce that just comes and we're just trying to consistently make money, but we're wanting to give back in some capacity, and this is what, because we made money, this is what we've been able to give back to. And I think that just creates such a different mindset when you're in business. It's more driving, it's more missional to people when you're like, man, I hit my sales goal, and because of that, like, I was able to serve 20 vulnerable children. I mean, that's incredible when you think of
Yeah.
those things. and that drives you at a whole nother level. And so I definitely am a huge fan of this. I've seen it work. I'd love to hear from you, man. Like, what's a top story for you where you've heard from maybe another, maybe it's a church who's utilizing this, maybe it's you personally, that you've experienced a story that you're like, man, this one hits.
Yeah, man. I've got two really good stories that I've been sharing recently, because they're fresh. They just happened. I've
Yeah.
got plenty of them. There's too many. We don't have time to tell all the stories, but man, the two that have been on my heart recently, and I've really loved to share, is there was this lady who put a request in. She's got five children that she's raising by herself. She's a single mother, and she's raising these five children. And the circumstance was, she got encountered by the Department of Children's Services. There were some things that needed to happen. Those things happened. This mom worked the process, but in the process of working, she expressed to her caseworker, I have a fear that my kids, because they're not involved in extracurricular activities, or because they have all this downtime and maybe they're getting bored, that they're going to get into trouble. And I just want to keep them out of trouble. In the community that I'm in, it's really easy to get in trouble. And she wanted to give her kids an opportunity to have extracurricular activities. So she found this sports after school program that she wanted to get them involved in. And with five kids and a sports after school program, the expenses can be high.
Yeah.
They gave her some scholarships, and so they were able to reduce the cost, but it was still a little bit more than she could manage. And so this request goes into Care Portal, and it's not, for anything extremely serious, but it's one of those things, we want to get involved and help, and maybe there's somebody out there who sees this, these kids want to get involved in sports, and that's a passion of mine. Maybe it's a coach or somebody who's really involved with sporting events, or maybe their kids were involved with sports. So whatever it is, whatever reason, people gave money to this request, and my church got the privilege to pick up those funds and to actually meet with the family. So I met with this young lady and got to meet her kids. And my wife and I, when we went, we got to hang out with them for a little while and just talk. And we were able to pay the registration fees for the sports camp, and that was great. I didn't think a whole lot of it. And sometimes these requests don't go, swimmingly and everything. But this was really good. We made a good connection.
Yeah.
And no expectation on the family to ever come to our church. We just want them to know we're in your community. We love you. If you ever need anything, please reach out.
Sure.
Well, she texted me a couple of days later and said, "Hey, if you have a minute, could you give me a call?" And I was just assuming. I was like, "Oh, she's in trouble. The kids need something else. There are resources that they need." So I already get my secretary on line, and I'm like, "Hey, we need to start making a ticket to go through our benevolence process at the church." And when I got time, I gave this mom a call, and she was just, overjoyed. She was happy. She was laughing on the phone. She's like, "We just got them registered and signed up. They had their first practice today. They get their uniforms next week. And I just wanted you to know they're getting their uniforms. I'm going to send you a picture on Monday. I'm going to send you a picture of them in their uniforms." And so that made me realize, I was assuming they were calling me to ask for help, but really what it is, if I were to leave here and my car were to break down, I've got a phone full of probably 20, 30 contacts in this area that I could pick up my phone and call. I could call my dad. He lives about an hour and a half away, but he'd be here. He'd come help me fix my car.
Yeah, sure.
But I also have the people in my phone. I can pick up the phone and celebrate wins with them and tell them, "Hey, this just happened. Isn't this exciting?" And they're going to celebrate with me. Right. And I became that contact in the phone of this single mom in our community, where she can pick up the phone and not just call me when she's having a bad day or when she needs something. Yes. She can pick up the phone and celebrate wins, and she knows I'm going to be excited, and I've got a vested interest in her and her kids and their success. Yeah. And so really that's what the platform is completely about. It's about building community. And if we can meet these people where they're at and help alleviate their financial poverty, that's great. But it's even more important to alleviate that relational poverty that they're all experiencing as well. Because when they have a support system around them, it makes everything easier. Yeah. The other story is actually from out there in Wilson County. There was a family who was helped through Care Portal. The church connected with them over a year ago, and I got a picture in my text messages yesterday after church. The point person at this church texted me and said, "Happy Sunday. Just wanted to share a quick story with you." And she said they had met this family doing a Care Portal request a year ago, and that this family had started coming to their church and been coming for, about the entire duration of the year. Missed very few Sundays. They were getting involved in kids ministry. The kids were loving it. And the couple wanted to be baptized, and the church had sat down with them and did a counseling session, just asking them, "Why do you want to be baptized?" and all this. And in that session, find out that they are not married. Mm-hmm. And they're, cohabiting, and they've been together for many years.
Sure.
Um, and this church's, bylaws and their rules, it says, we need to, you need to be a married couple, or if you're living in this lifestyle, then baptism is one of those things that we want to be careful with, and we want to walk you
Sure.
through.
Yeah.
And after that conversation, they were like, well, what does the Bible say about marriage? And so they got to walk through it with the pastor for about a month, walking through what the Bible
Mm.
says about marriage. And yesterday after church, the church came together and threw them a wedding.
Wow.
Had a marriage ceremony, had a big reception afterwards. The entire church was there to celebrate and to love on them. It got catered by some ladies at the church. So just one of the coolest stories. And she sent me a picture. The bride is in a beautiful wedding dress. The
Yeah.
gentleman's
Yeah.
dressed up, and one of the deacons was his best man. So just, connection that wouldn't have been made if this church hadn't been listening, hadn't been observing and looking for those opportunities to serve. And Care Portal just gave them the avenue to meet this family, and then the church took over and did the ministry part. So one of the coolest stories that I've seen come out of Care Portal, and that was just yesterday. So
Wow.
God's really moving, and He's using this network not just in Tennessee, but we're in 40 states now. So
Okay.
God's moving, and He's working, and I'm getting to see, the harvest of it. We don't always get to see the harvest of
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that we sow into, but this is
Right.
one that has a pretty immediate return on investment, where you're seeing, man, this is changing lives. This is really making an impact.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and I first off, just incredible job, and I love those stories. Those are so powerful, and again, just such a practical way of like what can happen when you say you put your yes on the table and you start with something simple as Care Portal and saying what can we do. And I have a lot of these conversations with people regularly, especially when you're looking at the foster care space of 23,000 people or children,
Yeah.
excuse me, across the United States who are in the foster care system. 10% of those are going to age out of foster care with little to no resources. When you look at
Right.
our jails, when you look at law enforcement, when you look at schools, when you look at everything that our tax dollars are going to, if you were to, I was talking to the sheriff recently through Leadership Wilson that I was a part of a while ago, and during that conversation, he even mentioned that most of those people that are incarcerated have been at foster care in some point in their life. And so
Yeah.
it's a very unique space that I think a lot of times it can be unseen. We may not know what's going on, but yet it's highly integrated into everything that we're doing. You mentioned sports teams.
Yeah.
Um, I recently saw a young man who was at our nonprofit, and we offer housing for children that are aging out of foster care and also that are currently in foster care. And this young man, he came out of our foster care home, temporary placement, and then he went to a church and is now being fostered by a pastor in that church.
Wow.
And he didn't even know this, but when he came to pick up this young man from the Bridge House, he actually saw another kid that used to go to his youth group that was
Wow.
there, and he was like, he texted me, he said, "Dude, I cannot believe I just saw this young kiddo here. He used to go to my youth group,"
Mm.
and then how that connected even to the school that this church wraps around, and how all of a sudden all the teachers are realizing like, oh my goodness, like you took this kid into your home, like he was part of the football team, he's part of school, and nobody knows any of this because it's a kind of the unseen part of our community that we don't hear a lot about unless we highly engage with it. And so I think it's
Yeah.
so important, one, that the awareness piece of what's happening. My light keeps going off. Here we go. Clap. Come on. There it is. Coming out. There we go.
There it is.
The awareness piece of this where they can get involved and they can say, hey, man, I want to start somewhere, and Care Portal is such a fantastic way to start
Yeah.
because it is overwhelming when you look at so many kids in foster care and you can say, man, I don't even know where to start with this. And
Yeah.
Care Portal is a great way to start saying, man, we can do something. Transitioning out of Care Portal a little bit, you're a high capacity leader. You're somebody who is very involved in your county and your community. I would love to know, first off, just the way that you lead is inspiring to me. When I hear you speak, when I hear you gather people, when your heart is on the table, your yes is on the table, you're plugged into your local church, that doesn't come by accident. There's people that have invested into your life. I'd love to know, what who is your biggest influencer in your life that has influenced you in your leadership journey? I would love to know who that is and why.
Yeah, man. So you bringing up foster care kind of flows really, really nicely into this. I was adopted out of Tennessee child welfare, and I was an infant. I was adopted at infancy, so I don't have
Wow.
any experiences in the system that I remember, that I have
Sure, sure.
cognitive memory of. But my dad is definitely that first person who had no reason to say yes. He had, there was no reason for him to just step in and say, I'm going to love this child who's not mine.
Wow.
And he stepped into my life. He took me in. I never felt treated differently. I didn't even know I was adopted until I was 12, and had that conversation with him. But he taught me how to be a man of integrity, and
Mm,
then he modeled what it looked like to be the leader of a household. So I think first and foremost, I have to give that shout out to my dad, just the
that's great.
strongest man I've ever met, and really, really inspirational to me. And then outside of the family, and outside of my dad, it'd really be my pastor. We actually grew up together. I know the circumstances he grew up in.
Yeah.
He had kind of a rougher upbringing than I did. Wasn't afforded the same opportunities a lot of times that I was afforded. But then when he became a pastor, and I saw his growth spiritually, and then I got to actually serve underneath him, years after he became a pastor,
Yeah.
just God wrote a cool story, and we get to work together. And seeing him lead, he's got 6 children at home. He's pastoring a church, and he's been bivocational several times throughout his ministry journey. We've gotten to a place as a church where he doesn't need to be bivocational, but he still
Mm,
chooses to teach a seminary class as well. So he's just doing so much with every opportunity he's given, and really has a work ethic that inspires me, and continues to. So his name's Stephen Bond. Just wonderful pastor. I couldn't ask for a better friend or leader for our church.
that's
So,
incredible. Man, I love that story. I mean, you can see why that hits close to home for you personally as well too. I didn't
yeah.
even know that. I mean, that's wild. And I love how God can use these type of things. Like here, you were one of these children, and obviously
Mm,
adopted, and then now you're serving those children now that are in these vulnerable situations. That's so cool, man. One of the things I've realized about leadership throughout my life is
mm,
that some of the most humble and profound leaders that have impacted me and that I've also been inspired by usually have had some type of hardship in their life, have had a pain point that has kind of brought them in to really mold their character, kind of that refining through the fire, if you will. I'd love to know, is there a pain you've experienced that has shaped your growth or contributed to your success as a leader that's kind of propelled you into the space you're at right now and what you're serving?
um, yeah, that's really great question. Um, I mentioned I found out I was adopted when I was 12, and that did a couple of things for me. I think initially I interacted with it in a very, innocent and probably immature way, where it was like, that's a neat factoid about me. It doesn't really
Mhm.
change the way that I think about myself or about my parents. And that was kind of, in my naivete, I think that was just what I assumed, is like, this isn't going to affect me long term. But as I grew, I found out more about my biological parents, and I found out more about my biological siblings even. And
Wow.
so I was one of 6 children in this household, and I was the only one who was put up for adoption.
Mm,
And I wasn't the oldest, I wasn't the youngest, I was the second born. So I wasn't, it was one of those situations. My biological mother was 16 when I was born. She already had one son who was born
okay.
when she was 14. So um, just an incredibly difficult situation that I had no understanding of, and still can't fully understand. But I've gotten to talk with her and learn more about it. But
Mm,
you know, I think what it did was it did put a wound in me that I didn't recognize until, you know, in my 30s. I didn't
mm,
start recognizing that this wound even existed. But there was a rejection
mm,
that I felt from my biological mother, where I just felt like, why me out of 6 kids? What was wrong with me, or why was I unwanted? When really I should have been looking at it from the lens that I was wanted by this family who did bring me in and did adopt
sure,
me.
sure.
but I think that's just what the enemy wants to do, and that's the lies that creep
Yeah.
up in your head is
Yeah.
what was wrong with me? Why was I
Right.
unwanted?
Sure.
And so kind of what I determined at a young age was I'm never going to be unwanted again. I'm going to get so good at these things that
Mm,
people are going to want me to be around. And I wasn't walking with the Lord always. So especially before I knew the Lord, that ended up being, that sore spot ended up being a point of pride too, where I was like, I'm just going to be the best in the world at these things.
right.
I'm going to be top dog. And if you don't have me on your team, you're going to regret it.
Yeah.
Kind of the mentality of like an NFL player getting traded to another team or a rival
Sure.
team, thinking,
Sure.
okay, well, when I come back, when you see what I can do, you're
Right.
going to regret not picking
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the attitude I had. So I think, what the enemy meant for evil, God can turn for good. And
Right.
so, what that did in me was just help me strive for excellence and learn how to put my nose down and work hard to achieve goals that I've set for myself. And my dad also, he was a farmer, so he instilled work ethic in me. So it went hand in hand.
Yeah.
And we just, I built on that, and I think it's turned into a positive,
Mm,
where at first it was definitely a negative, and it hurt my heart a lot, and God's brought a lot of healing to that. But that would be a wound, I think, that I would say, that really influenced the way that I've grown and matured as a leader.
yeah. That's incredible, man. Wow. Yeah. I mean, to your point, very, very real questions of why anyone would, everybody would ask that question, why
Mm.
me, out of six, biological kids. And, you were the one that went into adoption. And, I'm sure when we look at that, some people would be like, well, God just had a better plan for you. And,
Yeah.
but the reality is that, that brings up hard questions like,
Hmm.
why me, and going through that, and rejection, and feeling like, man, I'm not worthy enough. And then trying to prove ourselves, through life. And then we find, man, there's no amount of proving that we can do that is ever going to bring that fulfillment. It's when
Yeah.
we actually really let ourself and our dreams go, is when we actually really find God's purpose and the fulfillment of God in our life. And so that's such a powerful story, man. I love that. Thank you for sharing, being vulnerable in that. I know that hits. Tell me a little bit about, you talked about how driven you are. You talk, and I've seen that. It takes a lot of consistent effort to unite people, that are outside of your context. So when you're going to different businesses, different churches, and you're telling the Care Portal story, and you're telling your story, and you're trying to bring people together, what's the deeper motivation or calling that just keeps you going in that? Because obviously, we all have
Mm.
jobs, but there's always that deeper motivation, that drives us. But what's that deeper motivation or calling that just kind of keeps you going to the day to day through Care Portal and having these conversations, uniting people around what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think for me, for a long time it was I'm going to prove people wrong, and then
Yeah.
my motivation became after I met Jesus and studied the Word. I was somebody who was fully convinced that I knew everything, and fully
Mm,
convinced that I was too smart to believe in God, and so I get to a place where I have an experience with Jesus, and I just went full tilt. I was like, okay, if
yeah.
I'm going to believe this, I need to know everything there is to know about it. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go through I went through a 2-year apologetics course, and then I went to seminary school, and just really,
Great.
my early years as a Christian, I was like, I got to learn everything there is to know about,
Yeah.
this Jesus guy, and
Yeah.
about scripture, and what's the historical significance of all these things. So really, really studied the Word and made it my full-time job, and I've just always leaned on that passage in James that tells us, anything you do, whatever it is, strive for excellence the way you would if you were working for the Lord. So if
Mm,
it was the Lord himself that was your boss, if he was signing your paychecks, work for him,
yeah.
work for whatever you're doing as if you're working for him. And
That's
so that's probably my primary motivation. And then as it relates to kids, just seeing Jesus' heart for kids,
yes.
let the little children come to me and don't hinder them, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to them.
Amen.
Um, they're citizens of heaven, even if I'm not, they are, right. And so praise God, I have the confidence that I am. But seeing them and saying, okay, these are people who heaven belongs to. And
Yes.
then seeing Jesus in scripture say, what you did to the least of these you did for me. So
Yeah.
those two things coupled together, if I'm going to serve children and love on them, if I'm going to do everything diligently as if the Lord himself is signing my paycheck, then I have to I have to be on my A game. I have to bring it, and I have to
Mm,
know that
so good.
everything that I do, every action I do, is going to have a consequence, and I want all the consequences to be positive consequences.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that, man. What's it like for your family? You know, you have young kids. How long have you been married for?
We've been married going on 9 years now.
9 years. Love it. And
Hmm.
how old are your kids?
So I have a stepson, Mason. He's, I've known him since he was 4 years old. He's called me dad since,
Yeah, yeah,
Brianna and I got married. So
great.
we've just been buddies. I always joke. I say I fell in love with him first because I was serving in kids ministry at a church when I
Yeah,
met him. So
yeah.
he and I we've been buddies forever. He's
Love.
15, just turned 15.
Wow.
And then my little girl Galilee will be 8 at the turn of the year. So,
Love that name. That's so cool.
yeah.
Yeah. What's it like for them? Do they know what you do, and kind of the stories that you share for them? What's their perspective when they, hear dad, he's going around, he's bringing hope to, churches and businesses and uniting them around vulnerable children. And, they're watching you and seeing you. And I'm sure you talk about it at home and some of these stories, what's their perspective in this?
Yeah, and my kids get an extra layer of it because they're homeschooled, so I get to be their
Oh, there
principal
you go.
too. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of fun. But I think what they glean from it is they have a lot of gratitude for the things that we just are privileged to have and to get to do, and they know they get to see firsthand. My son goes on connections with me with these families. He's my running buddy a lot of the time. If we're going to pick up a washing machine or if we're going to get a bed, and I need somebody who's going to help me pick these things up, it's like, okay, well, school today is going to
Hmm.
be, we're going to go do this together, and we're going to have good conversation about it on the way there. We're going to interact well with the family, and then we're going to have good conversation about it on the way home.
Wow.
And so he gets to see it firsthand. Galilee's still a little bit young to understand, but
Sure, sure.
she gets the concept that I
Yeah.
have all these toys, I have all these things, and there are other kids who don't have them. So if there's ever a request that has a little girl, especially, and we're talking about it, and like, well, we're going to go take this bed to this little girl. She'll say, wait a minute, and she'll run in her room and she will get a gift, like a
Wow.
toy, a doll, something. She's like, well, give this to that little girl and tell her that I'm praying for her. And
Wow.
so I think what they get to see mainly is we are so privileged, and we are so blessed, even when we don't feel like it, even when, man, I blew a tire on the side of the road and get all mad. Where is God in this? And then, as we're all prone to do and be so forgetful, I
Yes.
think they see on a regular, consistent basis we have a lot,
Yeah.
and we should, to people who have a lot, we should be blessed to be a blessing. We should be able to give of our resources to help others. So I hope that I'm instilling that, and I really do see it in my son and in my daughter that they have a heart for people.
Mm.
So and my wife goes on almost every connection with me. So Brianna's always there too. And
Yeah.
she's the nicest person in the world. So she just really gets to love on the family and interact with them. And
Yeah.
Mason and I get to carry the heavy stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
a good
great.
time.
That's great. Man, I love that. And I've seen that personally in my life as well too. And parents, hear me if you're listening, whether you're in business, whether you're in church, whatever it is, man, I can attest to that. I mean, it is absolutely essential that at a young age, or even whatever age they're at right now, if you have an opportunity to be able to be missional with your kids,
Mm.
um, even if it's just once a month, to do something together that's helping them get outside of their circle, it will pay massive dividends in their life. And really,
Um,
it is such an open door for them. One, it creates a thankful heart. It helps them be able to see beyond their circle, when they're going into different parts of their community and they're seeing various different needs and vulnerable families, and then they see what they have. There's a new level of awareness that they have. Expectations are maybe not as high as they used to be, and there's just a thankful heart. And really, I think a lot of times too, what I've seen in this space is that when parents are doing this together, when we're serving together, there's many times that the Lord will deposit a calling into their life at a young
yeah,
age. There's a calling that can happen to where they're all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, like I have a passion for this. Like, for example, my daughter Brooklyn, she comes with me when we do foster family night outs for the organization that I'm a part of. And
yeah,
one person said to me a long time ago, and I'll never forget it. They said, I asked them this question in this open conversation, and we're just talking, and I said, just kind of give me some wisdom as a young dad, I'm constantly doing things in ministry, and it's so much easier. And I typically just kind of run and gun by myself, solving problems, getting things done. And I noticed a lot of times when I was trying to serve in some capacity, my wife and I would do it together, and then we would a lot of times leave our kids with a babysitter or something like that.
Mhm.
And this individual said to me, anytime that you can bring your children with you, it's going to be harder. It's going to be more chaotic. There's going to be a lot more coaching. You may not get it done as quickly, but it will pay off huge dividends because
Yeah.
they will feel like they're part of this, and God will start to do ministry to in the context of you all together, and there'll be callings that are distributed to each one of you in unique ways, and it gives you something to rally around together as a family as well too. And I'll never forget, when I transitioned kind of that philosophy of leadership, and fast forward into seeing my kids now, there
Mm.
hasn't been a Christmas or a Thanksgiving that I haven't brought my kids with me to my organization to serve vulnerable children and families. And you would think that they'd be like, oh man, like we have to go there for Christmas and Thanksgiving, or oh man, I have to go to a foster family night out and
Yeah.
hang out with a bunch of kids and help. But they're asking me to go. So if it's like Christmas
That's
morning
awesome.
or Christmas Eve and we haven't gone to our organization, they're like, Dad, when are we leaving? Like, we got to go and we got to serve in some, like, we got to do this. I want to go over there. And so, and that's something that God puts in their heart, but it has to be stewarded from the parents. And we can be so busy as parents, we can be so busy in what we're doing with sports and all these type of things, but man, if we're not building character at a young age, and we're not helping them see beyond their circle, I mean, I think that's one of the really can be a really sad thing to happen in the life of a child, where they grow up and they didn't get that. And so parents listening, hear me, dude, doesn't matter what age, they could be 16, 17, doesn't matter if they're 20, call them up like, hey, we're going to do this together. Let's serve together, and just be honest. Say, hey, I didn't do this, but I want to. And I feel like we need to do it together so that we can see God move in our family. So I absolutely love that. Huge, huge, huge fan of that. Huge fan of families serving together.
Yeah.
And absolutely love that. Dude, you are such a blessing. I'm so thankful for just having you on and hearing from you, hearing your story, your vulnerability. Tell me a little bit about, just real quick, how can people get involved with Care Portal? If there's a pastor listening, he's like, man, I would love to get more information on this, or maybe there's a business
Yeah.
who's listening as well too, and man, we want to get plugged in, we want to be able to help. What's their next step?
Man, it's really easy. The process is so simple. So Care Portal is no cost to local churches. There's no upfront fees. There's no
Yeah.
expectation put on churches. So for any pastors or ministry leaders that want to get involved, just go to careportal.org. There's a sign up button. If you click sign up, you'll just put in some very basic information, an email address, and just answer a couple questions about where your church is located, so we can get you in touch with the right person, the right regional manager or church ambassador to reach out and do a training. But that's really it. Just go sign up, and then somebody like myself will be giving you a call and saying, "Hey, saw that you signed up for Care Portal. When is a good time to walk you through next steps?" So it's really easy, low cost to entry. I mean, no cost to get involved, and then the expectation on the church is you be as involved as you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Open it up to your congregation and let them really determine, how far you want to go with Care Portal, because it's
Great.
a free technology tool to churches and to businesses. There's no cost at that point of entry for them. So really, really easy to get involved.
Yeah, fantastic. And if you're a business that wants to get involved, would they follow the same process, or?
Yeah, yeah. So business leader, you just go on there, and there's when you go to the sign up page, it asks you, are you a church, an individual, a
Ah,
business leader?
gotcha.
And then and then you just click the one that's best for you and walk through the process. And if you feel like you've clicked something wrong, don't worry, we can always help fix it on the back end too. That's a big part of my job. So
Fantastic. Very cool.
yeah.
Well, brother, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you. I know you're busy, you're solving problems, and we appreciate you, man. Thank you for uniting our county around this. And I hope that it inspires other counties throughout Tennessee and even outside of Tennessee who say, man, I want to get involved. I want to be able to do something and
Yeah.
be able to see what God does. I think he's going to do some special things with people that listen to this, and hopefully action takes place and you get a ton of requests that help you just continue to move the needle, my man. So thankful for you, and man, many blessings to you, bro. Thank you for being on the show today. You're the man.
Thank you, John. I really enjoyed being on. If you guys need anything else from me, you just let me know. You know where to find me.
Yes, sir. Will do. God bless you, brother.
Yeah, you too, man. See ya.
Yep. Bye bye.